Hey guys, welcome back to our Grow Along where I show you what to do in the garden each week. I want to show you my plan on what I'm planting everywhere. It includes crop rotation and then what I'm planting spring, summer, fall, because they all have to work together with the crop rotation plan. So I'm going to take you bed by bed and just keep it as simple as possible. The bed behind me right here, this was potatoes this spring, and I follow that with winter squash. Now the winter squash goes all the way through fall, and it's dead simple. There's 1,000 different winter squashes you can do. I'm doing butternut squash because it's my favorite, mainly because I like butternut squash soup. To plant, all I do is make a little furrow, put the seeds about a ½ inch deep, cover them over, and make sure it stays well watered. My goal is to make sure that all of my archways get covered with greenery at some point this year. I'd really like for it to all happen together so that everything is covered at the same time, but I will take what I can get. This bed has my garlic. I planted it a little bit late. You're supposed to plant it in October, but I didn't get it in the ground till December, late December, so it's not quite ready, but I expect it to be ready in the next week or two. Now you can pull it early, there is no problem with that. And after the garlic, I'm gonna be planting sweet potatoes, which will also go all the way into the fall. Now, sweet potato vines will produce beautiful flowers like morning glory, and you can train them to climb, but they're not self-twining. So they're not gonna climb up these arches themselves. I'll have to weave in all the ends to get them there. Sweet potatoes make clusters wherever you plant a slip, and that's where you're gonna get the majority of your sweet potatoes. The vines, as they send out long tendrils, they will produce roots along those vines that will feed in to that main cluster of sweet potatoes, but they won't produce more sweet potatoes along the vine. It's really just where you plant the slips. So I'm gonna be planting about 12 slips along this row. I'm gonna plant them every 12 to 15 inches. It also helps me with the goal of getting something to climb over these archways. This was peas. Now my English peas, they were looking good 3 weeks ago, started to die back 2 weeks ago, and were completely dead a week ago. So we took them out, but how you take them out matters. Because they're a legume, they fix nitrogen for you and feed your soil. Legumes are a family of plants that includes peas, green beans, lentils, peanuts, things like that. And they all fix nitrogen in the soil. But if you rip them up by the roots, you're missing out on a major part of the benefits. If you cut them off at the roots decompose and release all that nitrogen back into your soil. For the summer, I planted peanuts here. For the peanuts, I planted 2 rows on each side of this bed, planting them 6 to 8 inches apart, about 1 inch deep. Keep them well watered, and I already have them popping up. This is my herb bed, and these are all perennials. What I'm planting now is Thai basil. Thai basil does really well in the heat. I use it in cut flower arrangements, food, and the bees love it. To plant, simply pull back the mulch, sprinkle your seeds, and scratch it into the surface. Water in well. I'm also going to try some perilla seeds. Perilla is new to me, but it's an herb that makes really big heart-shaped leaves that are used in a lot of Asian cuisines. It's also called sesame leaves. They are not part of the sesame family, they just taste like sesame seeds, which I love. The ground has finally drained enough that I can get my basil in the ground. I put it with my tomatoes for companion planting. Make a hole, white roots are healthy roots. Plant it so that the top of the soil matches the height of the soil in the bed. Gardener tax. The best part about being a gardener is the snacks. This is my tomato bed. It is doing really well considering I haven't staked it, fertilized it, really weeded it, and I've ignored it through all this rain that basically had it drown. Right now you The camera is basically in the sinkhole that I stepped in on my little short that I put together about way too much rain. We're about to get into intense summer heat that I cannot handle at all. So everything I'm planting has to be able to basically survive on its own with a drip system. So if it can't get by with a little bit of water and just a basic maintenance, I'm not putting in my garden for the summer because I don't really go in the heat. This is the right time to start more tomatoes from seed for your fall garden, but I don't. There's two things I do instead. One, I just keep these guys alive. These guys get good morning sun and afternoon shade. Because they're really close to the house, they get shaded from about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock on, depends on how late in the summer we are. Then this tree right here gives it early afternoon shade. So we get good morning light right here. Then they get that for about 3-4 hours. They get a little break, then they get a couple more hours, and then they get the break from the house. So my tomatoes will be just fine here. I planted them here 3 years ago and they did super well. The next thing that you could do instead of starting more tomatoes from seed is just take a cutting and root it. So this would be perfect. Cut the top off. And then do you see that little growth in between those two branches? That little guy? That guy will produce a whole new, it's gonna make a side shoot, which is also called, I can't remember, suckers. It'll make a new side shoot or a sucker and it'll shoot out and you'll keep getting growth. Now, as you can see, my tomatoes desperately need me to come out, stake them up. And we will get there eventually. But until then, I don't have the energy to be mad at myself for doing my best. And I am doing my best. A couple of quick tips on tomatoes is you're gonna get pest damage if you let them ripen on the vine. So this right here doesn't look pretty, but if you just harvest them, there's a little knuckle right there. If you break it right at the knuckle, it'll come off. Take that inside, ripen it inside. It'll be every bit as good as if you ripen on the vine. Okay, so just break it off. And then this over here, these are my San Marzanos. So pretty easy. If you're like me and you have tomatoes but not quite enough to make a sauce and decan it, you can just wash them, top them, toss them in the freezer. And most of the time I don't even top them. I just throw them in the freezer whole, and then when I thaw them out to cook them into a sauce or whatever, I just take the tops off. And I bought a huge freezer on purpose so that I wouldn't have to can in the summer because it's too hot. So I put them all in the freezer and then I can them in the fall, winter when it's way less hot. This was my Brassicas and Onions bed, and this would have been a great thing for me to plant in the fall, but in the spring it was just too late. We had too short of a window of great weather for them and they didn't produce. So I did a bit of research and I found out I was wrong. You're not supposed to plant them in the winter or early spring. You need to plant them in the late fall. So we'll be getting that ready. In a couple of weeks we'll be starting a ton of stuff for our fall gardens. But this week what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be removing all of these brassicas and I'm going to be putting in melons and flowers. I'm going to be planting the melons to grow up and over these arches. Now, in the spring, I planted them kind of on the sides of the bed and they were lower into the water that we had standing water for all of those weeks of rain. I don't think we're gonna get that much rain here in the summer, but I'm gonna plant them in the middle just to safeguard against that. So they'll be kind of on the top of the mound so that they won't be rotting away in the water. No way I'm gonna remember all the flowers, so I'm just gonna put them on the screen and I'll show you some shots of each one so that you can get an idea of which flowers you like and want to plant in your garden. These are some of the arrangements I made last summer. These are my favorite 2 varieties of celosia. There are many more types. They make great dry flowers. Gomfrina. This flower is an untidy grower. It sprawls everywhere, but its tight blooms are favorites of pollinators and they dry super well. Zinnias, probably the easiest flower to get started with, makes a great cut flower, attracts loads of butterflies, and takes the heat like a champ. Black-eyed Susans, these came as part of a wildflower mix and they self-sow each year. They're shorter lived as a cut flower, but they still work. Marigolds. I grow giant varieties and have used them in many cut flower arrangements. It's the leaves that have a strong smell, so strip the leaves and use the flowers. Queen Anne's lace, or Annie. It makes beautiful stems all summer long. These flowers are biennial, which means they don't flower in the same year you plant them. I found that starting them in the fall produces blooms the following summer. Sunflowers. These were planted by birds. This will be the first year I plant my own. Petunias. These are great to fill in beds and borders. This bed has corn, edamame, it had fava beans, and it still has some green beans and some yard-long green beans. These crops aren't quite ready yet. The edamame is close, and I think it'll be ready in the next few days. The corn is coming along better than I've ever done before, which is great. The yard-long green beans are struggling with how much water that we've had, but they're starting to bounce back, which is great. And the regular green beans we're gonna replace with yard-long green beans. So yard-long green beans are also called Chinese noodle beans, Chinese beans. There's a bunch of different names for them. They basically, yard-long and Chinese, if that's in the name, it's probably these guys. These guys take the heat like no problem. They grow prolifically. They have beautiful flowers, but they do attract a lot of black fly. So just be aware of that. I haven't found a non-chemical solution for black fly yet, but I'm still gonna read up on it and see if I can find something. Now, because I've taken out the row of fava beans that was right here, I'm gonna replace that with okra. Yes, okra. I don't even like okra. Here's the deal. Okra is slimy. That is gross. I like fried okra, but the entire point of growing vegetables is to eat healthier, so covering it in batter and deep frying it seems to kind of undermine the entire point of having a vegetable garden. So I asked online in multiple forums, and I was given a multitude of recipes, most of which recommended roasting it. Apparently it turns it into a nice, crunchy, delicious snack. So we're gonna try it. I had nothing planned to follow the fava beans, so okra is a great thing for me here. I'm gonna get a small crop of it and get to try it out and see if it's worth some more space in the future. This is my new garden bed that I'm getting ready to plant in. It's not quite ready yet. You can see that there are weeds in it, and it hasn't had enough time to really break down well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start my stuff from seed, like in little trays, and then plant out little plants in a few weeks. There's also been so much rain that anything I have planted has pretty much rotted the seed away before it had a chance to grow. I'm gonna be starting some sunflowers, some giant mammoth ones that need just a little bit of support, so I'm putting them by the trellis. Then I'm gonna put some gourds. I'll let them go everywhere, and they will climb up the trellis, so we will get some nice archway action. Then I'm gonna put a row of peppers, and I'm gonna put in some purple holes. So purple holes are southern peas, and I have never planted them, but they're a legume, which means they fix nitrogen, which is great for your new garden beds, and they love the heat. So anything that can handle and take care of itself is awesome, because I can't handle the heat, so they basically have to be on their own. All right guys, that's it for planting. Next week I'm gonna be going over how to build a watering system, and the week after that we're gonna be talking about how to start our fall gardens and getting going on that right away. Now, if this was helpful, I would really appreciate if you would like, share, subscribe, all the things, so that YouTube knows my channel exists and that I can eventually get paid and it can pay for my garden. Here's this week's garden chores. Feed your container plants. Discolored leaves often mean they are lacking nutrients. In-ground plants can get nutrients from the soil, but container plants rely on you to give them what they need. Stay on top of the pests. They tend to multiply rapidly in our summers. Keep harvesting everything. Early morning is the best time to harvest. you.